Ava, aged 4, and Lexi, aged 2, were found in the main bedroom having suffered fatal gunshot wounds.
4 members of a family found side by side, 2 tiny daughters in pajamas, their mother crumpled beside them, and their father dead just feet away. Each member had a closed-range shotgun wound inflicted by someone who could not be caught now.
Lexi Lulubelle. Hello, darling. Hello, you're such a happy little baby.
Daddy!
Behind the walls of the family home in Woodmancote was a scene that left even the most experienced officers shaken. In the main bedroom, the toddlers, Ava and Lexi, were found lying in their parents' bed. Ava was 4. Lexi was just 2. They were still in their pajamas. Ava was closest to the door. A ballistics expert would later confirm she'd been shot at close range. Lexi was right beside her, shot just the same. There was no sign they had ever left the bed, no sign they even had a chance to scream. Next to them, on the bedroom floor, was Kelly. Investigators believe she was first shot on the landing, then somehow made it into the bedroom, wounded, maybe crawling, maybe trying to reach her daughters, before being shot again, this time fatally. The family dog had been shot too. Outside the room, the father, Robert Needham's body was found on the landing. It was a scene of total devastation. Officers who walked into that house didn't forget what they saw. Some of them spent days inside working the scene. What they witnessed wasn't just tragic. It was brutal, calculated, and deeply disturbing. There was no note, no warning. Just a family wiped out in one night. Was this another case of a familicide? The family's loved ones were looking for answers. In the quiet village of Woodmancote, tucked away in the countryside of West Sussex, a family was building a life many would envy. Their days were filled with toddler giggles, warmth, and plans for a bright, adventurous future. Kelly Fitzgibbons, turning 40 years old, had just started writing a bucket list. She wanted to take her daughters, Ava and Lexi, to Disneyland. She dreamed of a luxurious trip on the Orient Express, but she also longed for simpler joys, joining a baking class, watching a movie at a drive-in, donating blood 25 times to earn a silver donor card. That last one spoke volumes. Kelly was the kind of person who'd stop to check on a neighbor, drop off a home-cooked meal, or text you just to say she was proud of you. She had a heart that made people feel safe, seen, and loved. Kelly decided to share her life with Robert Needham, a 42-year-old self-employed builder. Together, they built a loving family. They were the kind of parents who documented milestones with wide smiles and made space in their busy lives for bedtime stories and birthday cakes. Before the tragedy, Robert and Kelly's was a story that started like many others, quietly, without fanfare, but with all the hope in the world. Kelly had grown a little tired of her usual routine. The nights out, the pub weekends, they weren't fulfilling anymore. She craved something steadier, someone to go on long walks with, to curl up on the couch and watch movies with. She wasn't looking for fireworks, just a hand to hold. Then came Rob. Kelly was around 26 when they met, and he filled that space in her life effortlessly. Rob was different, shy, quiet, maybe even a little awkward in a crowd, but with Kelly, he lit up. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room. He didn't snap, didn't raise his voice. He adored her in a way that was soft and steady, and she adored him right back. Rob wasn't flashy. He was a builder by trade, hands always busy, mind always focused. But he was dependable. He didn't say a lot, but he showed up in the little ways that matter most. Kelly's family noticed the shift in her almost immediately. She relaxed around Rob, trusted him. Within a year, they were living together. Her texts were often full of pride, showing off photos of his work around the house. "Look what Rob did to the hallway," she'd write. "Wait till you see the bedroom." To those who knew him, Rob was the classic traditional man. He liked his beer, enjoyed fishing, worked hard, and kept to himself. Not a social butterfly by any means, but kind, loyal, and and seemingly devoted to his growing family. By 2015, life was beginning to take shape for Kelly and Rob. That August, they welcomed their first daughter, Ava, a bright, bubbly child who lit up their world.
Ava was
2 years later, their second daughter, Lexi, was born, and the couple's family felt complete.
Lexi Lulubelle. Hello, darling. I know you're such a happy little baby.
Shortly after Lexi's birth in 2017, they made a big move. Rob's father had passed away, and the couple decided to relocate to Woodmancote, a quiet village in West Sussex, to live with Rob's mother, Maureen. The plan was practical: support Maureen in her grief, help her adjust, and stay close in case she needed anything. The house they moved into was a large, detached property owned by Maureen. Rob, ever the builder, took on the challenge of renovating it himself. While the work was ongoing, Kelly and Rob settled into a converted section of the house, a self-contained unit with 2 bedrooms upstairs and a kitchen and dining space below. It was cozy, functional, and filled with the joyful chaos of raising 2 young children. Kelly did what she always did: gave her all. She helped Maureen with errands, ran the household, and devoted herself to her girls. While Kelly was out there making life easier for everyone, Robert was rarely in the picture. Last time he was seen alive with his family was before the day of the murders. Just 2 days before, on Friday, March 27th, Kelly posted a picture to Facebook, a sunny afternoon walk through the fields near their home. Rob led the way with the family dog Billy, while Ava and Lexi followed close behind. The caption was lighthearted, a simple nod to the family's daily routine during the first days of the lockdown. Everything about the photo suggested normalcy. The next day, she shared another update, this time in a group chat with friends. Rob had just finished building a climbing frame in the garden for the girls, and Kelly snapped a photo, joking that it would keep them busy for a while. It was the kind of small, everyday moment that said nothing was wrong. That same Saturday, she video called her twin sister, Emma. The conversation was typical, casual, and filled with the kind of back and forth that only twins can share. They talked about lockdown life, about how strange it felt not being able to go out. Kelly was her usual self, chatty, upbeat, holding it together despite the uncertainty outside. At one point, Ava proudly showed off her marble collection, and Lexi was darting around in the background, full of energy. Later that evening, Kelly and Rob ordered a Chinese takeaway, a quiet end to a memorable day. But by the next morning, something felt off. Emma hadn't heard back from Kelly after sending a message the night before. At first it seemed like a delay, maybe a distraction with the kids. But as hours passed and calls went unanswered, the silence grew heavier. Emma started reaching out to others, friends, family, but no one had heard from her. A sense of dread took over. Deep down, Emma knew something was terribly wrong. It wasn't just worry, it was a gut instinct, sharp and unavoidable. She couldn't explain it, but she felt it in her bones. Something horrific had happened. She would never see her sister again. Emma heard herself saying, "I know she's not alive." She lived 140 miles away from her sister, so she asked relatives living closer to check in on Kelly. But it wasn't them who broke the news. It was the police. When officers arrived at the Needham home in Woodmancote, they were met with a quiet that felt unnatural. Inside, they discovered a scene of horror. Kelly, Ava, Lexi, and Rob, all dead, each killed by a shotgun blast. The official confirmation shattered whatever little hope remained. When Emma called Carrie, Kelly's best friend, to deliver the news, she could barely get the words out. At first, Carrie assumed it had to be some kind of tragic accident, a gas leak maybe. But the second call came like a punch to the chest. It wasn't an accident. Carrie couldn't comprehend it. The words made sense, but her brain refused to process them. She broke down completely. trying to hide her reaction from her own daughter. That night she didn't sleep. For days she shook uncontrollably, haunted by the question that now echoed through every corner of the family. All she could think about was a double life led by Robert in front of her eyes, yet somehow no one noticed everything that was wrong with this seemingly loving family. It all started with a gun license. Robert applied for his first firearms certificate when little Ava was just a month old. It came out of nowhere. Suddenly, in the middle of new fatherhood, he wanted a shotgun. Kelly thought it was strange, odd timing maybe, but if it made him happy, if it was just a harmless hobby, she wasn't going to stand in his way. Still, something about it didn't sit right. To get that license, Rob had to fill out an application, one that required honesty about medical and criminal history. He had to declare if he'd ever struggled with depression, anxiety, thoughts of harming himself, or substance misuse. Rob answered no to all of it, but that was a lie. He lied about everything. His criminal record, minor but still there. His mental health, buried beneath decades of struggle. Neither did he inform about the bicycle theft, nor that he was treated for depression as a teenager. Rob Needham had a documented history of depression, anxiety, and multiple episodes of mental illness. It stretched over 20 years, and yet he told authorities nothing. Even when a firearms inquiry officer visited Rob in person and mentioned they'd be checking with his GP, Rob didn't come clean. When finally confronted, he claimed Kelly had filled out the application for him. That, too, was a lie. The handwriting wasn't hers, and the officer didn't dig any deeper. Despite all this, despite the red flags, Rob was granted the license. His doctor, aware of his mental health history, confirmed his past but believed it wasn't enough to disqualify him. And that was that. No one asked why he had lied or what he might have been hiding. No one wondered what could happen when a man with a long, troubled history was handed a gun and sent on his way. It would all come to a head on that devastating day in March, because behind those walls, in that quiet family home, Robert used that very shotgun to kill his daughters, his wife, and even the family dog. And then he turned the gun on himself. As investigators searched for answers, one truth became increasingly clear. To understand what happened inside that house, they had to look far beyond the crime scene. They needed to examine the quiet cracks that had been forming over the years, subtle signs that, in hindsight, painted a deeply unsettling picture. Ava and Lexi adored their father. To them, he was warm, playful, and fun. But behind closed doors, the reality was far more complicated. Rob struggled with the increasing demands of fatherhood. While Kelly embraced the chaos of raising two small children, Rob seemed overwhelmed by it. He worked long hours and was often away during the week. Even weekends weren't always spent at home. Rob frequently escaped to fishing trips, leaving Kelly to juggle parenting on her own. What she saw as a need for personal space may have been something far darker, a man quietly unraveling. There were signs that Kelly noticed but didn't fully understand. At one point, she became concerned about a strange skin issue Rob had, something he brushed off as a result of years working as a builder and inhaling toxic materials. It sounded plausible, and Kelly, trusting as always, didn't press further. She believed him. She always did. But the truth was far more dangerous. What Rob never admitted, not to Kelly, not to his other closed ones, was that he had been battling a long-term cocaine addiction. The damage wasn't just physical, it was psychological. A doctor would later describe his condition as chronic, a result of years of substance abuse that had taken a quiet, corrosive toll on his body and mind. And somehow, Rob had managed to hide it, not just from acquaintances, but from the person who loved him most. Kelly never doubted him. That was who she was, open-hearted, trusting, and loyal. If Rob said something, she took it at face value. She didn't question his explanations or investigate further. and perhaps that's what made it all the more heartbreaking. Rob had been capable of hiding big truths from her, while she was simply trying to hold the family together. Rob got all the love from his girls, but did he give out any? Especially to Kelly. As the investigation unfolded, a deep dive into the couple's past would reveal subtle signs of a relationship falling apart. The documentary The Fitzgibbons, A Murder in the Family, gave an unsettling glimpse behind this facade of stability. For all the photos of country walks and family dinners, something was horribly wrong. Though the inquest did not conclude that Kelly was formally a victim of domestic abuse, there were signs. Small, private moments that pointed to a pattern of fear and tension between the couple. In text messages recovered after the murders, Kelly pleaded with Rob to control his temper. She asked him not to shout, not to slam doors. She admitted she dreaded coming home. Sometimes she told him she would get out of his way so he wouldn't explode in front of the girls. Just a month before she died, she suggested they take a break. To outsiders, Rob still looked like a devoted father. Even Kelly never contradicted that impression openly. But in reality, he was a man with a long history of weak mental health, recurring thoughts of harming himself, days spent away from the family, and a secret cocaine addiction he never confessed to. Those messages were more than just arguments. They hinted at something building in the background, something Kelly never fully admitted, but which was slowly tightening around her. She never told anyone, not even Emma, whom she spoke to every single day.
I spent hours and days and nights thinking, have we missed anything?
Emma would later say she had no idea Rob was ever violent or controlling. From what she saw, Kelly's life looked happy, settled, but it wasn't. Kelly's silence wasn't unique. Many women in abusive relationships keep their fear hidden. Sometimes they don't see it as abuse at all. In England and Wales alone, around 23 such cases are recorded each year, an average of 2 every month. Behind these statistics lies a grim pattern. The perpetrators are overwhelmingly men, while the victims are most often women and children. Between April 2010 and March 2011, there were 46 recorded cases of ending one's life after committing homicide across England and Wales. By contrast, between April 2018 and March 2019, that number dropped to 18. But for those who study the harrowing realities of domestic abuse, even the lowest figures ring hollow. Criminologist Jane Monckton Smith, a leading voice in the field, insists these numbers don't tell the full story. Whatever official figure exists, I can promise you that's an underestimation, she says. The real scale of this horror often goes unseen, especially when it's buried behind closed doors or masked by narratives of mental breakdowns and family tragedies. In Europe, the annual rate of such cases ranges from 0.05 per 100,000 people in England, Wales, and the Netherlands to a staggering 0.2 in Finland, 4 times higher. In the U.S., the rate soars even further, reaching up to 0.38 per 100,000 in some states. Behind every statistic, there's a story like Kelly's, a woman who never saw it coming, children who never had a chance, and a man who made sure that if he couldn't control them in life, he would claim them in death. Domestic abuse doesn't always leave bruises. It can be quiet, a raised voice, a slammed door, a threat that never quite sounds like a threat. Over time, the confusion seeps in. Abusers use mind games, gaslighting, and blame to keep their partners off balance. A woman might know she feels miserable, but not be able to explain why. She might even believe it's her fault, that she's too sensitive, too demanding, too much. As long as she feels she is to blame, she's less likely to speak up, less likely to ask for help. And sometimes, that silence ends in tragedy no one saw coming.
This wasn't the first time our nation had seen such devastating family violence within the supposed safety of home. 35 years earlier, another family gathering ended in unimaginable horror, becoming one of the most infamous cases in British criminal history. The parallels are chilling. Multiple relatives dead, a domestic setting, and questions that haunted investigators for years. Now, we revisit the 1985 White House farm murders and Jeremy Bamber.
They say that blood is thicker than water. But when it comes to murder, family ties can easily become as twisted as the crime itself. On August 7th, 39 years ago, an entire family was found brutally murdered in their farmhouse. Each member had been shot multiple times, leaving no one behind, except one. Jeremy Bamber, the only survivor, claimed that his mentally ill sister had gone berserk, killing everyone, including her own children, before turning the gun on herself. His sister did struggle with schizophrenia. She had been hospitalized before and once claimed her children were the devil's offspring. She even had suicidal thoughts. But then at the funeral, Jeremy was spotted cracking jokes, grinning to himself and making comments about finally being in charge. Was this just his way of coping, or was there something darker hiding behind that smile? And was his sister really the killer, or was she just an easy scapegoat? Let's get to the bottom of this and uncover the truth behind the White House farm murders. The Bamber family was once considered the most picture-perfect family. June and Neville Bamber, the parents, got married in 1949 in a Christian church. Both were deeply religious, with June being especially devout. On the other hand, Neville was known as a strong, manly man, easygoing, down-to-earth, and well-liked in their community. He was highly respected, often seen as the backbone of the village. Additionally, Neville loved a good party, while June was quieter and more reserved, making them the perfect pair. But June's devotion to her faith was intense. She practically lived and breathed religion. After they married, June and Neville longed to have children, but soon discovered they couldn't conceive. So they decided to adopt and welcome two young children, a boy and a girl, into their home. Though not biologically related, these children quickly became part of their loving family. They named their children Sheila and Jeremy. At first, the family lived in a small house, but as the kids grew, they decided they needed more space, so they moved into a larger home that had once belonged to June's father. This new place was quite impressive. Over 300 acres of land and a classic red brick farmhouse with white trim. It was the kind of house that looked straight out of a picture book, and it was known in the area as White House Farm. The Bamber family also owned a business called O.C. Road Campsites. In short, the Bambers were financially well off. They had their farmhouse, a flat in London, and a caravan site. So June and Neville wanted nothing but the best for Sheila and Jeremy as they grew up. They sent Sheila to several private schools to ensure she got the best education possible. After high school, Sheila went on to secretarial school to become a secretary, following the path her parents believed would secure her future. Jeremy also went to private school, but he had a lot of behavioral issues. He had a knack for causing trouble and wasn't exactly the most popular kid. In fact, his family struggled with his wild antics, including some pretty extreme pranks. One of his favorites was to scare his mother, who had a deep fear of rats. Jeremy would hide baby rats in his pocket and force her to reach in, making her touch them. He'd also zoom around her on his bike, circling so fast it made her dizzy. Because of this, his parents hoped that boarding school might straighten him out. But instead, Jeremy faced more challenges. He basically felt isolated, bullied by both students and teachers, and was mocked for being adopted. The bullying was so intense that rumors of possible abuse at the school surfaced. But after enduring these tough times, Jeremy finally graduated and headed to college. And after graduating in 1982, he returned home, where his parents made sure he was well taken care of. They set him up with a charming cottage just down the road from White House Farm, a new car, and a slice of their business. They even gave him an 8% share in the campsite business, with the expectation that he would work either at the farm or for the company. To the outside world, the Bamber family seemed like the epitome of perfection. Bright kids, a beautiful home, devoted Christian values, and a thriving business. They appeared to have it all together. But in reality, June had a tough time with depression. In 1955 and again in 1958, she ended up in a psychiatric hospital. Back then, people didn't understand mental health issues very well. June was treated with electroshock therapy, where tiny electric currents are sent through the brain to cause a brief seizure. This was supposed to help reset the brain, but today it's used only in extreme cases and is still a bit controversial. Interestingly, June's depression was partly because of her strained relationship with her kids. Now, remember, she was very religious, seeing everything as a battle between good and evil. If someone didn't share her beliefs, she would instantly think they were bad. And June was upset with Sheila, who had been trying to make it as a model, and Jeremy, who was secretly growing cannabis on the farm. Her strict religious values seemed to push her kids further away. The tension between June and Sheila was especially intense. June even called Sheila the devil's child after Sheila got pregnant at 17. Despite being normally against abortion, June pushed for it to protect their family's reputation. This decision drove a huge wedge between them, leaving Sheila feeling deeply betrayed and never able to trust her mother again. In a twist of fate, Sheila actually married the man she'd originally gotten pregnant by, Colin, in May 1977. They wanted to start a family right away, and after a few attempts, they had twin boys, Daniel and Nicholas. But just 5 months after the babies were born, Sheila discovered that Colin had been cheating on her throughout their marriage. Their relationship fell apart, and Sheila was left heartbroken and deeply depressed. By 1983, Sheila's mental health had deteriorated so much that she went to see Dr. Hugh Ferguson, the same doctor who had treated her mother. Dr. Ferguson admitted her to a psychiatric hospital where Sheila was initially diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. However, after further evaluation, Dr. Ferguson changed the diagnosis to paranoid schizophrenia, and Sheila's struggles mirrored her mother's. She began calling her children the devil's children, and even expressed terrifying thoughts of harming them because she believed they were possessed. She also claimed she could make her kids harm others. Despite these alarming signs, Sheila was eventually released from the hospital in September 1983 and was put on antipsychotic medication. She continued to see Dr. Ferguson regularly. Unfortunately, she had another psychotic episode and ended up back in the hospital for about a month. During this stay, it was decided that her children should be removed from her care due to her ongoing mental health issues.
When I first saw Sheila Caffel, I diagnosed that she was in a state of acute psychosis and had been so for about 2 weeks. It was evident that she had been depressed and unconfident for the previous 18 months and had an increasing sensitivity about other people. The history of her case was of a slow onset, leading to an acute breakdown, inferring a poor outlook. I arranged for Sheila to be admitted to St Andrew's Hospital, Northampton, on the 4th of August 1983. During her treatment, I found that Sheila had bizarre delusions about possession by the devil and complex ideas about having sex with her twin sons. She thought her sons would seduce her and saw evil in both of them. In particular, she thought her son Nicholas was becoming a woman-hater and was a potential murderer. She said she felt as if she was caught up in a coven of evil. These feelings appeared to be involved with her relationship with her adoptive mother and her standards of good and evil. These feelings, she expressed, were clear symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia. Sheila did not give any impression that she was violent or potentially violent. She was bewildered.
They were sent to live with their father. But on August 4th, 1985, Sheila took her sons to visit her parents and Jeremy at the farm. The kids were thrilled to see their grandparents, and Sheila was eager to reconnect with her family, even though there was still some tension with her mother. The family was happy and excited to see each other. On August 6th, 2 days later, they all gathered for a family dinner. Jeremy, Sheila, the twins, and their parents, Neville and June. During the dinner, Neville and June suggested that Sheila consider putting the boys into daytime foster care. It's unclear whether they meant actual foster care or just daycare, but Sheila was upset by the suggestion. Jeremy noted that Sheila seemed offended and uncomfortable, possibly feeling like they doubted her ability to care for the children during the day. After dinner, around 9:30 p.m., Jeremy headed back to his cottage down the road. Around the same time, the farm secretary, Barbara, called Neville. She noticed that Neville seemed preoccupied and agitated, and it sounded like there might have been an argument happening in the house. Neville even abruptly hung up on Barbara, which was very unusual for him, as he was normally very polite. About 30 minutes later, June's sister Pamela called. During their conversation, Sheila also spoke with Pamela, but Pamela noticed that Sheila seemed a bit off. Fast forward to the early hours of August 7th, around 3:30 a.m., Jeremy allegedly received a call from his father, Neville, saying that Sheila had gone wild with a gun. The call suddenly cut off, prompting Jeremy to call the police. However, instead of dialing emergency dispatch, he called the non-emergency number.
My father's phoned from White House Farm, and he sounded really frightened. He says, my sister's gone crazy and she's got a gun.
When Jeremy finally reached the police, they told him to head to the farm and that they would meet him there. However, as they drove, the officers noticed that Jeremy was driving unusually slowly. Given the urgency of the situation, his father had reported that Sheila had gone wild with a gun. This slow pace was strange. By around 5 a.m., everyone arrived at the house. Instead of going inside immediately, the police chose to wait outside for 2 hours. They even used a megaphone to shout into the house, asking if anyone was there, but received no response. The only sound was a dog barking. The reason for this delay was unusual and unexplained. On the other hand, Jeremy spoke with the police outside, updating them on the family dinner, the phone call from his dad, and the upset Sheila had shown about the suggestion of foster care. He also mentioned Sheila's mental illness. At the last minute, Jeremy told the police he had left his gun at his parents' house, loaded and sitting on the counter. Given the potential family conflict, the loaded gun, and Sheila's mental state, the police began to piece together a troubling picture. It wasn't until 7:54 a.m. that they finally entered the house, where they discovered the bodies of Sheila, her 2 boys, and her parents, Neville and June. June, Sheila, and the twins were upstairs, while Neville was downstairs in the kitchen. Neville, found slumped over in his pajamas, had been shot 8 times, 6 of those in the face. It was clear he had fought back, as there were numerous defense wounds on his body. Sheila was found in the master bedroom, and the boys, Daniel and Nicholas, were in their beds. June had been shot 7 times, Sheila 3 times, Daniel 5 times, and Nicholas 3 times. The scene was a bloody mess, and the phone was found off the hook. When Jeremy was informed, he had a severe reaction. He was reportedly hysterical, screaming, crying, and even throwing up. The police quickly concluded that Sheila, with her mental illness, had killed her family before turning the gun on herself. This theory was soon spread by the media, painting Sheila as the culprit due to her unstable mental state. However, some aspects of the case were puzzling. Sheila had been shot 3 times, which was unusual. The gun was found on her, pointing in the direction of her face. The medical examiner noted that it's possible to shoot yourself multiple times while still being conscious enough to pull the trigger again. But then again, the handling of the crime scene was notably poor. The police burned the bedding and carpet to remove the blood, an action that destroyed potential evidence. They also mishandled the gun, with a detective picking it up barehanded, ignoring the importance of preserving DNA and other fingerprints. Additionally, a carving in Sheila's room that read, "I hate it here," was found, but it was never determined when it was made, whether that day or much earlier. So it was quickly determined that Sheila was the problem and the culprit. 3 days after the murders, Jeremy inherited White House Farm, along with the family businesses. With his parents gone, he was free from their strict religious rules and could do as he pleased, including continuing his cannabis farming. A few days after the murders, the family held a funeral. Jeremy's behavior at the event drew some raised eyebrows. Instead of a quiet morning, he was overly dramatic, loud sobs, screaming, and generally making a scene. Friends and family started to notice something strange. After the service, when everyone was leaving, some relatives caught Jeremy with a wide grin on his face as he wiped away his tears. It seemed like he had switched from sobbing to smiling as soon as he thought no one was watching. The media coverage only added to the oddness. Jeremy made a big show of collapsing to the ground and needed help from his girlfriend to get up. But as soon as the cameras were off, he snapped out of his dramatic act. People noticed he was switching between being overly emotional and then acting completely normal. During the wake, he made bizarre comments, like how he was now the boss, and talked about his plans with his girlfriend in a disturbingly casual way, which was unsettling given the circumstances. Meanwhile, the police tested the gun found at the scene for fingerprints. They discovered both Sheila's and Jeremy's prints on it. Jeremy explained this by saying the gun was his and that he had been handling it earlier that day for a planned rabbit hunt, though he never got around to going out. Soon after, while Jeremy was settling into the house, one of his cousins found a gun silencer hidden in a cupboard in the family office. This was a significant discovery because, if Sheila had used the silencer, it would have been impossible for her to shoot herself in the way described. The silencer was missing from the rifle when it was found, raising further suspicions about Jeremy's involvement. With the silencer attached, the long gun became too unwieldy and lengthy for Sheila to physically maneuver into a position under her chin to shoot herself, making it nearly impossible for her to have committed the act on her own. When the silencer was examined, investigators found a small spot of blood on it. It was sticky and strange, so they sent it to forensics. While they couldn't determine whose blood it was, they confirmed it wasn't Jeremy's and it could belong to any of the victims. This meant the silencer was likely used during the murders, making it impossible for Sheila to have committed the act herself. The fact that the silencer was later found in the gun cupboard was crucial for the prosecution, as Sheila would have had no reason to return it to the cupboard before taking her own life. Jeremy's girlfriend, Julie, who he had been with since 1983, received a call from him on the day of the murders. He mentioned something was wrong but didn't give details and abruptly hung up. A few hours later, Julie found out about the murders. Jeremy's call and sudden disconnection raised more suspicion about his involvement. About a month after the murders, Jeremy and Julie's relationship started to crumble. Julie grew increasingly suspicious of Jeremy, constantly questioning his statements about his family's deaths and poking holes in his stories. Their arguments escalated, with Julie even attempting to smother him with a pillow during one heated fight. Things began to go completely sour when Julie discovered Jeremy's infidelity, pushing her to the breaking point. Furious, she physically attacked him and then went to the police, expressing her concerns that Jeremy might be responsible for the Bamber family murders. She revealed Jeremy's shady past, including a previous scheme where he staged a break-in at his family's business to steal money, which he claimed was meant to highlight their need for better security. Julie also shared that Jeremy often voiced frustration with his family, feeling they were overly controlling and critical of his choices. He reportedly believed Sheila was a bad mother and that the children would turn out disturbed. Julie suspected Jeremy's motive was greed, thinking he wanted more money despite the significant amount his family had already provided. According to Julie, Jeremy's parents had recently made a will, dividing their estate equally between him and his sister Sheila. However, Jeremy was dissatisfied with this arrangement and wanted the entire inheritance for himself. Julie claimed that Jeremy intended to eliminate his whole family in one go, ensuring no one was left to share the inheritance. He allegedly discussed various methods, including burning down their house, drugging them with sleeping pills, or shooting them to death. Jeremy reportedly believed it would be easy to blame Sheila due to her schizophrenia, positioning himself as the grieving victim. Julie also recounted a chilling conversation where Jeremy called her after a family dinner, expressing his frustration and stating, "It's tonight or never." Later, at 3 a.m., he allegedly called her again, saying, "Everything's going well. Something's gone wrong at the farm. Love ya. talk to you later. The night of the murders, when they were outside the house, Jeremy reportedly whispered to Julie, "I should have been an actor," after she questioned his involvement. Julie's account further escalated when she claimed Jeremy confessed that the family plumber had been hired to carry out the murders, although this was quickly disproven as the plumber had a solid alibi. The police, however, wasted no time in arresting Jeremy, whose alibi didn't hold up. After landing in jail, he bailed himself out and hightailed it to Amsterdam, where he wasted no time selling off his family's belongings, even going so far as to try to sell nude photos of his own sister to a tabloid. But his luck ran out when he returned to town on September 29th and was immediately arrested. When the trial kicked off on October 3, 1986, the prosecution painted a damning picture of Jeremy, arguing that he orchestrated the murders and used Sheila as his scapegoat. They highlighted the defensive wounds on his father, Neville, suggesting he had fought someone stronger than Sheila, likely Jeremy. The defense, on the other hand, tried to shift the blame back to Sheila, citing her mental health struggles, but the evidence against Jeremy was too compelling. After just 9 hours of deliberation, the jury found Jeremy guilty, sentencing him to 5 life terms with no chance of parole. Yet this case still stirs debate today. Some people believe Sheila was the real perpetrator, while others think Jeremy's ex-girlfriend, Julie, fabricated her story to get back at him. And through it all, Jeremy continues to proclaim his innocence. Due to Jeremy's conviction, the estate was passed to his cousins instead. One cousin moved into White House Farm, and together with others, they acquired full ownership of the caravan site and other properties. Jeremy claimed that his family had framed him, a claim one of the cousins dismissed in 2010 as an absolute load of piffle. What's your take on this? Do you believe Sheila's mental illness drove her to commit these horrific acts, or do you think Jeremy, driven by greed and a desire to escape his controlling family, was the true culprit? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, the world can be a dark place, and sometimes you just never know what's going on in someone's mind. So, keep safe out there, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, check out our other videos for more gripping stories. Take care, and see you in the next one.